Hi, welcome to episode 68 of the Jake Blanchard podcast, brought to you in part by the fine folks at fellowshiprand.com, the premium men's grooming products. We're also brought to you by Stream2C, that's STREAM, the number 2, SEA.com, the number 1 mineral-based sunscreen, according to Rolling Stone magazine. They make sunscreen, personal care products. Go check them out. And again, JBP at checkout gets you 10% off of both those brands. My guest today is Aaron Singleton. He's the host of the Journey Through Time and Stuff podcast. He's a bassist with the band Earth to Ashes out of Portland, Oregon. He's a free thinker. He's a mechanic. He's a music lover and someone that inspired me to venture into the world of podcasting. Oddly enough, I've also known him since the 7th grade. We grew up together in Alaska, and I'm excited to have him on the podcast today. He's an interesting cat. Aaron, welcome, my man.
Jake, thank you so much for having me, man. This is an absolute pleasure. I have to say, just as I'm about to pop the top in my Capri Sun right now, you are popping my virtual podcast cherry, if I don't be too explicit. And I've hosted 170 episodes of my own podcast, and this is the first time being interviewed by someone else. So
here we go, man.
I love it.
It is for me, because you know what? You reached out to me a couple episodes into my podcast. You saw some things going on social media about my coaching business, about my consulting firm. And you were like, hey, dude, I'm curious, why don't you come on my podcast? And you were actually the first podcast that I was ever featured on.
Look at that.
Here we are, home and away, brother.
That's the way. I want to make one more disclaimer as well. I'm feeling quite trepidatious about this. I've been, ever since I saw you doing a podcast, and I've been trying to follow as closely as I can. And you have had such wonderful, big guests, and the work you're doing is so fantastic. I'm feeling a little disadvantaged in not only my own personal status. I'm not a doctor. I'm not owning my own gym. I don't have, I'm a musician and a mechanic, but I don't know. So I'm feeling a little impostery right now.
Man. It's funny. And I was so looking forward to this kind of conversation as well. So very casual, very friendly, the way that you run your show essentially as well, which is, nothing too formal, but to reflect on it a little bit, like I'm so much about the journey, man. And I think everybody has such a cool and interesting story to tell and perspective to give. And I think that's in the spirit of what you're trying to accomplish as well. It's just introspection and love and positivity and asking questions. And I find so much value in that. My cup gets so full. So regardless if you have doctor in front of your name, sir, it's such a joy to have you.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing, man. Thank you. Yeah, I have, over the course of the exploration and the journey I'm on as well, I had no idea the value I would have 3 years into it when I started. I had no idea the appreciation I would get for seemingly random, uninteresting people from just the outside world are the most interesting people on the planet, and that you've met in your realm, in your scheme of things. And you, when you're able to have these conversations, you start looking at everybody as interesting, and not another person. I recently got back from a vacation. I was going through the airports, and I kept walking around overstimulated by the fact that every single person there was on a journey in their life. They were all either going somewhere or coming back from something. And I guarantee every one of them had something incredibly unique and interesting that would open my mind to something. And I was like, God, I would love to have this entire airport on my podcast and just go, where are you going? What are you doing? Like
just through the airport.
Yeah.
Well, hey, as you're kind of reflecting in that way, like what was your genesis of starting the podcast? Like what was the whole point of the journey through time stuff, and where the name come from too? I'm curious.
Okay, so yeah, that's a beautiful. Thank you. And I you know, in listening to past episodes, it's funny, you even comment on yourself, oh, I just asked 2 questions in one. And it's a beautiful thing. I do it too. My brain is always working inherently faster than my mouth, and I am more curious than I have syllables to enunciate that off quite often. So thank you for the multiple questions in one. So I moved to Portland, born in Alaska, born and raised there, moved to Portland in 2013 to begin a music career. I had lived in Arizona, gone to college, did all the stuff to be a mechanic, been a mechanic forever, worked and done everything. And music fell into my life again. I was always passionate about it, but performing it became a necessity for mental health, a necessity for my own worth and positivity and my inner self. About 2009, 2010, excuse me, the Capri Suns fighting.
Capri Sun, got that.
And
some
so
really acidic cherries going, huh?
it's hard. It's hard. Actually, this is the strawberry kiwi.
Oh, that's what's up.
We are not endorsed by
product placement.
No, so I moved here in 2013, and in just wanting to be a musician. My whole band relocated here. We were trying to do the break into a bigger scene, make a name for ourselves. You know, and we were all in our mid-20s, and we came here to do that. And as every first step of every plan inevitably does, it fails. And when you're doing that on your own, it's sometimes easier to deal with when you have 3 other counterparts that the thing only breathes because it's built by 4. As soon as one's out of there, the thing in essence doesn't work anymore. It's not the same. It's the old adage of you have a ship and you start replacing one piece at a time as it wears out. How long into replacing them is it no longer the same ship? You know, and that's kind of the way I felt about it. I lived with my best friend Jason Smith, who we also know and went to the same middle school as us, and you know, he was a singer in my band, and we moved here and we found ourselves without a guitar player, without a drummer, with another guitar player, with another drummer, again without a guitar player, again without a drummer, and it just went through the cycle of us trying to keep this thing alive that we weren't ready to call it a different ship yet. And when that culminated, we were sitting here almost New Year's of 2017, looking at each other, and we were broken. You know, our dreams were crushed. We hauled our loved ones here in hopes of this, and they followed us for our dreams, and now our dreams didn't exist anymore. We all had lives, we all had jobs. The rest of the world was going, and I was getting up and being a mechanic every day, and they were waiters and waitresses, and Jason was, still worked at Walmart, and our lives moved on, and we came home every day and we said to ourselves, what are we gonna do, man? We have music equipment, we have microphones, we have everything it needs to make anything we want. And that was when the podcast was born, man. I mean, it was just, we knew so many musicians from the Portland area that we had gotten to meet, played shows with. The community here is fantastic. And we wanted to tap into that, interview our friends. We started listening this podcast a long time ago. You can go back, and we played finals on the podcast. We would pick albums. I have a record collection, or people would come over, and we were just trying to tap into what made people interested in making themselves an object of entertainment. Because following music is a passion, and anybody can be a musician, but there's something up here, up in the brain area, that is inherently different about the ones who want to be on stage for other people who are also like music, right? Like, what is the similarities? What's the differences? What's the root cause of that next step in putting yourself out there?
And so the goal was originally to get to know musicians in the local community, or was it just scratching itches of curiosity, or was
all
there
of
a
it?
Thesis? Yeah.
No, yeah. There wasn't a thesis. The reason the name is A Journey Through Time and Stuff, Jason and I at the gym, and we were sitting there on, it was a leg day. It was a Wednesday. I don't remember exactly what Wednesday, but it was a Wednesday because it was leg day. And we're sitting there on the squat rack, bouncing between that and doing drop sets on the Smith machine, and trying to come up. We had already decided, okay, we're going to do a podcast. What's the name of it? And it's like we were trying to be overly clever and quippy and short, and we thought about, do we put our names in the title? We do, but we want, it seems like the style of internet show or podcast show, with i.e. the Joe Rogan podcast or the highly accredited and successful Jake Blanchard podcast, it creates an essence, like it's a beautiful thing for you, because you have the opportunity to be the interviewer interviewing, and it is through your eyes and through your thought process that we learn about the other person. And we weren't that comfortable with ourselves when we started to make that the thesis of our podcast. We didn't want it to be about us necessarily or feel like we were tied to it. I think it was imposter syndrome. I think we were heartbroken. I don't think we were vulnerable enough to put ourselves in the front and center. And so we wanted a title that described where we were, but not who we were. And so that was, we're on a journey. We love time. We started looking at podcast titles, time and space. Time. I'm fascinated by all that. I have a galaxy and planets and stuff behind me, but none of it was as broad as our brains were. We do skits, we make fake commercials, we have running jokes that are episodes and episodes long, that the punchline is 10 episodes from where we started the bit. And, we did it that way. So if somebody was listening to every one, they would be on a journey with us as our brains are evolving and formulating this thing. And it's just a bunch of stuff, man. It was, undefined. I still have a problem trying to quantify exactly what my podcast is. Sorry. Good.
No, as you're, it's awesome to be able to talk about stuff like this, right? Because you find yourself taking a step further and further and further back away from it as you're kind of putting your hands around it. So what was I don't know, either major lesson learned or how you've evolved as a person through the process of doing this? Because you've done it fairly consistently for a number of years, the 4 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Just putting out episodes and just loving just the creativity and the content within it. I'm just kind of curious, as you take a step back, what does that body of work mean to you, or how have you evolved within it? Capri Sunset.
The think juice. Okay, beautiful question again. These topics only come up when I'm talking about it with Jason, who doesn't live here anymore. He's technically not in the podcast, but he comes. We still do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, creatively together. And the wow. Okay.
Shout out to Jason Smith, by the way. What a cool guy he is.
Yeah,
and,
love you, buddy.
And I got to know him a little bit in middle school. I remember his sister Melissa was a fantastic singer as well, and she
still is. Yeah.
And I haven't talked to her in 20 years, but
right.
But it's just one of those things that you remember when somebody's got chops. So it's cool to have co-created that. So Again, I'd love to have maybe both you guys on the podcast. It'd be fun with Jason eventually.
I'm sure he would love to do it. He's such a special human, and I've been drawn to his brain for a very long time. He is just singular. He has a way of analyzing and viewing the world, and it can be as broad as that or as specific as one word to make a joke funnier, and his brain will just come at it from a different way, and it is hilarious. We have some songs and some bits we've made that I still play back and can't help but gutturally just laugh at the absurdity of Jason Smith. It's such a beautiful thing. So yeah, I will start with the breadth of the work and kind of where I feel about it now, and then the lesson I've learned, because they are part and parcel of the same thing. So if you were to go on iTunes or wherever the podcast you host from, or podcatcher, you will find that my podcast is broken into 3 seasons. We didn't start seasons; we were just doing a podcast, but we evolved. And so the first season is like 100 episodes long, and that's from the beginning to when Jason and I in ourselves, I don't remember what it was, maybe 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. We took a small hiatus. We did 100 episodes in less than a year. And we were releasing 2 episodes a week. We were doing 1 episode on weekends with a guest and interviewing them. And then we were doing episodes we called bazookas, and they were short 30, 45-minute episodes, which actually is kind of average length for most hour-ish podcasts, or 34. And we call those short ones because we have 4-hour podcasts. We have 5-hour podcasts, that we've done. And we poured everything that was not finished with the band into that first year. And we were just going, and it was a machine. And we didn't have any goals. We didn't have any mindsets. We really were just stumbling at foot over the next, falling into this world of what are we even trying to be? So that was the first 100 episodes. We took a little break. We came back and did another 70 before he moved. And I know 40, 50, whatever it is. And that was the redesign, making a little more streamlined, being a little more creative and choosy with when we wanted to put in new bits and write new stuff, and pulling back a little bit on the production of making it just a big joke all the time, and getting a little more serious. The conversations we quit doing 2 a week. We would do some solo ones, but that would just be the episode, and we would have topics we want, so we started kind of formulating that. And then, he moved, and the 3rd season is when I decided to come back and do this just solo. And that has been the hardest part of all of this. It was a beautiful thing to have a partner in, a sounding block, another brain, and a push. There's a crazy duality with creative people who can't not still create. And that is, we want to do it because we love it, but you don't want to feel like you're having to do it to love it. And there's a time, and I took a little break off over the last few months. The podcast I did before was with one of my other best friends. The one I just released before this is probably coming out on mine as well. I don't, where I really went deeper into the hard part of trying to make this something about me, but about other people. And I got stuck with the want that I felt like I was in essence doing all of the pushing. And like the only analogy I have to that is, in a band, the drive for me to be a good bass player and create a good bass line for a song, help compose or narrow down something, or help signify lyrics to fit the mood, or whatever we're doing. That's all from my inner drive to want to be a good musician and want to perform good stuff for people. But once the music is going and the band is going, it has its own momentum. You gave it the start, you gave it the initial inertia, but it has weight, it has density, and it has acceleration, and it will continue to move. And all of a sudden, you're less feeling like you're initially giving the stone a push, but you're like ghost riding it almost.
Yeah, you become part of the system.
And it then pulls you along.
Right.
And all you have to do is continue to be the you that started it. You don't have to do the work to keep it going and keep being better. And this podcast for me felt like I was still. So I was not only having to do the work to find all the work that goes into making a podcast successful and making your brain successful at doing it. That's one side. And then the work for keeping the podcast going is the other side. And it, by myself, I didn't do the work. I didn't do the stepping back, which this conversation is allowing me to do right now. I didn't do it to realize that maybe I wasn't ready for it yet. I felt like I was constantly having to do more work than was feeling fun.
Yeah.
Until I got the boom, the mic is on and this is happening. And then it's all the weight comes off. I'm sipping Capri Suns. Life is grand. And then the mic stop and I say goodbye. And now I'm back to going, well, I guess I did that. So I got to do it again.
Yeah.
Because I got to do it again. You know, I want to do it again, but I got to do it again. Yeah, I don't know. Am I answering your question?
No. That's,
I have a tendency to ramble and talk for a long time. So,
you're just kind of, I use the word unpack a lot. So I'm going to use that word again, right? Unpack. But, it's really interesting to reflect on, whatever that balance of energy and enthusiasm, and then taking action around it. Like when it's in a good balance, it's great. It's just when you start to lose energy, enthusiasm, it becomes very hard to take that action. You have to re-anchor in your why, right? Why am I doing this? Why is this important to me? Why is it important to others? What value does this bring? Does it need to bring value to anyone but me? Like that's, a lot of really good questions.
That's the most beautiful thing. Does it need to bring value to anyone but me? When I started this podcast, I said no. I told myself through and through, I wasn't doing this for listens. I wasn't doing this to become famous or make money off of this. This is an outlet. Just like I didn't start playing music to become a musician that people knew. I started music to heal myself. I started this podcast to heal myself. Through that, though, I recognize that I make people happy doing it, whether it is the podcast or the podcast has been, or the podcast or music, the podcast has been a lot harder for me to see it because I don't actually see the crowd of people in front of me, right? When you're playing on stage, it is visceral. There are people literally there looking back at you. And then you can see when they look down at their phone instead of continue staring at the stage, or when they need to go buy another drink, or a conversation starts and those aren't healthy, but those are things my brain does. I'm an inherently insecure man. I'm a tortured artist most of my life. And so those are things I notice when the podcast is happening. I don't get to see those things. I can't tell if somebody starts it and listens for 10 minutes and never does, or comes back and finishes it. I don't know what, I just don't know. And so it became hard for me. And then I started finding myself craving attention. I started finding myself lacking the person going, hey, good job. And I didn't think I needed it, but all of a sudden I needed it, and I didn't want to need it. It was a crazy place to be because I didn't want to feel like I was relying on satisfaction outwardly to feel good about me doing the podcast. But as soon as I couldn't shake the fact that I didn't have it. And it wasn't something it happened. It in my brain went, hey man, you haven't, I have to say, Jake, shout out to you, Jason, and then my buddy Ben Charles, who's also a jiu-jitsu guy, rolls down here, and he's the vocalist for Ligature Marks. Great band out of Portland. He's a fantastic talk. You guys, you three, were instrumental in me still sitting here and doing this, man. You truly were, Jake. You reached out in times when I was sitting here. You cold called me, man. I haven't had a friend cold call me in an incredibly long time.
Shout out to anybody who gets a Jake Blanchard cold call. It happens. It happens sometimes.
I tell you what, I got off that phone call and I just sat on my couch and I cried, Jake. And I was like, holy fuck. It took one person to go, hey, you're struggling. I see it, but you're okay. And you like doing this thing, right? Yeah, I like doing this thing. Well, then just be okay with liking doing it, man. I loved your shit. I want to see more. And that conversation was something that I needed. I felt good. I didn't want to know I needed. And then I had to do the serious inner monologue talk with myself and go, hey, take this mask off when you're feeling insecure about something that you're afraid to just be okay with. You know, it is a place of fear. It's a place of never feeling a part of a group in the way that I perceive other people feel a part of a group. It's all about inner perception. You know, I've felt this way my entire life. I feel this way in my band. I love those guys to death. I've been on soccer teams, football teams. I had friends. I was in chess club, everything you could think of. And I distinctly remember having friends and sitting there around a table with my friends, and they're all talking. And I'm at that table and I'm going, man, I think that all of these guys are more friends with them than I am with them. Or they're more, if there are qualifications to be more or less in a group, for some reason, they're more in the group and I'm not. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I don't think that they ever actually thought that of me. I've had these conversations. And, no, man, you were always with your fucking our friend. But for some reason, my head always went, yeah, you're just not in it as much as they are because they like each other better than you, or you don't have an inherent quality to give to fulfill the group dynamic that they've all have and can give each other and trade freely this box of emotions. And it's tough, man. I don't know.
I know exactly how that feels. Like you're touching on something that's a really hard concept to explain, but something that maybe I don't know how many people I would call it 1 out of 10. Like there's a small, at least in my experience talking with people, like I have a really hard time ever feeling quote unquote accepted.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm a lot more comfortable with not being tied to the group or tied, like, because it really does come back to me. Like I like the freedom to not feel bound to other people or
Right.
committed to groups of people. Like I don't know. It's a challenging concept to
Groucho Marx said it beautifully. I don't want to be any part of a club that'll have me.
Sure. Yeah. I feel a lot more comfortable in the pursuit than settled in.
Right. Right. So then let me ask you this. When we all love the pursuit,
yeah,
but why are you pursuing?
Yeah. So for me, like, and it's funny because as we're talking through this, I'm thinking about the career that I've picked as well, right? I like consulting. I love consulting. It's what I do for a living. I love going into problem spaces and helping identify opportunities for improvement and then implementing those changes. And then it's time for me to fucking leave.
Mm-hmm.
Like operationalizing something, seeing to its adherence day to day, that is a difficult spot for me to be in. Like it doesn't bring me a lot of joy or value of like managing processes. I like changing them. I like driving change. I like doing the really hard, complexity work, not the day-to-day work. And I view my relationships with a lot of people like that. I love the pursuit of getting to know people. I love learning about new topics that I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
But then once I get settled in, it becomes very hard for me to find
The routine.
Acceptance. Yeah. And even with friends that I've had for 15 years, like I love my friends. I love being around them. I love, all those, all the things that it brings. But my cup, I guess, is filled in one way of the love and security and the friendship and those kinds of things. If I didn't have it, I would miss it for sure.
Yes.
But I still feel a void unless there's a new person around, and then I'm talking to them. That's who I'm going to. That's what I'm going to find out about your story. Like, I'm sorry, I'm here to talk to you.
So let me ask you this. I've been trying to do the mental work, the interpersonal work to figure out, because I'm the same way. I would get done as a kid playing with friends and go home and go, I would literally think this, and it's so embarrassing to say, but I would literally get done playing with my friends, go home, and then sit there and go, oh, I hope they're thinking about me right now.
Yeah.
Like not that they just weren't for 3 hours and we had this or whatever the play date was, whatever the group hanging out was. As soon as I would go, I would find myself thinking about how cool they were.
Yep.
And I was terrified to think that they weren't thinking about me.
Oh, dude, just the after action report that you're giving yourself of like all the different things that happened and like how you could have reacted differently and like what you should have done here or should have done there. And you torture yourself for literally days.
Dude, I still regret conversations that I never had in 8th grade. Yeah. Like I still think about those things, and I find myself playing the dangerous game of going, what would life look like now if I had only said that one thing different?
Yeah.
To a conversation that literally no one else remembers even happening but me. Like, this isn't, it's not two-sided, and their life is hinging on this thing as well. It's only me. And so I've been trying to go, okay, where does that stem from? And I don't feel like I do it now. I don't, I don't, I honestly don't find myself like this conversation getting done and getting off the thing and going, oh man, Jake is a really fucking cool guy. I hope he's thinking about me and thinking I'm cool too. I don't find myself doing that anymore.
Bullshit.
But what
you're going to do that when we get off here.
I know. But what I do find myself doing now, which is why I said a dangerous game, is I will, I am attracted to giving people my fullest attention.
Yeah.
I'm attracted to trying to elucidate a nuanced conversation with somebody about something they care about, because I feel like it's an amount of tension, and it's an amount of attention I am able to give them that I felt like I never got. Yeah. I really feel like I'm trying to just make sure that no one goes, oh, that dude didn't ask me one thing about me. I want him to go, I would almost have them go, God, he asked me so much, I'm a little worried about how much I told him. Like, yeah.
So do you view then that hyper awareness, let's just call it hyper awareness for now.
Great term.
Do you view that as a superpower now, or are you self-conscious of it?
Oh, it's both. I'm incredibly self-conscious of it, and it is in fact a superpower. It's with great power comes great responsibility. I put off a lot of people, I really care about the talk. I really care about the words people use, to a point where I recognize after the fact I make people uncomfortable.
Sure.
If there's not a lot of people in my working life, in my non-creative life, that are used to being asked questions about why they think something. A lot of people are asked about what they think, but not a lot of people are asked about why.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. A lot of people spend a lot of time with a lot of thoughts in their head that they cannot articulate the reason why they believe it. What convinced you that was true? And it could be literally about anything, but everybody has a point that if they do the work, they could figure out that when they became convinced of something. It may be deep, it may be very present, it could be as small as why you think Brussels sprouts are gross,
yeah,
to as big as which God of all possible gods exists. Is there purpose? Whatever belief is, something at one point in time convinced you that was true. And I found myself in a place going through this podcast, talking to people, that I would be saying something and go, God, I have no idea when I believed that, when I first believed that. I have no idea why I'm holding firm to a position that I don't know when did I start even thinking that, you know?
It's it's a fun analogy or just a mental experiment is just to think
Yeah.
about all those things that you hold to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe those are balloons. Maybe those
Yeah.
balloons have really long strings. And maybe those long strings disappear into a basement. And then when you start asking those questions, the scary thing is you're walking into the basement, you're walking down the stairs. And then there's a point in time where you realize that the string of some of those balloons are tethered to nothing. And then they
Yeah.
start to float away. And when you ask those questions enough and you get into the deep parts of your mind and you're asking questions from a why do you think this way as opposed to, what's your opinion or, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
you ask the why and you realize it's not tethered. It's, oh no, this thing that I think about myself, this belief that I've held for years, this perception that I have, it's really not rooted in anything. I lost my why. I don't know why. That's a scary thing for a lot of people.
Oh, it's incredibly terrifying. When you were talking about walking in the basement, I literally thought back to the Home Alone fireplace burner that talked and Macaulay Culkin was intensely afraid of, right? I instantly think about being in that room and watching balloons fly out of that room.
Yeah.
And going, fuck, I'm losing part of myself. Like that balloon is me, man. I was so attached to the fucking balloon. And that was the other hard part of this is, okay, why are you convinced things are true? And then once you ask that question, and then you actually start picking apart that you are identical to your beliefs. You are the no part of you as the you that you would tell someone else about is identical to the belief you hold about something. You are completely separate from that thing that you believe about the world to be true. You may feel it so tangibly that if you were to learn it wasn't true, your entire framework of reality would have to be altered. Like it would be altering it for you because you don't have a choice to not believe it. If you are no longer convinced of something, your world changes, but you don't. The person that is you, your framework may, but I've really had to try and do the work and not let my ego be attached to being wrong. Not let there's a beautiful thing that I love asking people when the word wrong and right come up. And being right about something because you know something, or being wrong about something because you didn't know something. And I love asking the question. And in fact, I'll ask you, what does it feel like to be wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question. I probably would answer it very different a couple of years ago than I'd answered today.
Sure.
I've gotten used to using language that allows me to be wrong, as in
right.
like I currently believe that this is the way that things are. Like I'm open to,
right,
especially any kind of like hot button issue,
sure,
political, religious,
yeah,
whatever. Like
you can't find any of those right now.
Yeah, of course. So I really kind of like opened up the possibility of being wrong in those areas. But what it feels like to be wrong,
right.
I think is exactly that process I was talking about earlier. It's like there's a bitterness.
But hold on. Don't get it confused with finding out you were wrong. Everybody knows what it finds. I'm talking, what does it feel like to be actively wrong, in the state of being wrong, not finding out you were? I'm talking about the time when you're actually wrong and you're only in the state of being wrong. What does that feel like? The answer is, it feels exactly like being right.
Yeah.
They are
I see what you're saying.
identical.
That's a really nuanced. Yeah. That's interesting.
It's identical. There is no measurable difference between being wrong and right in the action of being there. It's only hindsight that makes you feel regret, makes you feel disgust, makes you feel disconnect, makes you any of these words to elucidate being wrong and the feeling of, oh fuck, I said I can't, I was, that feeling is only post being wrong. You had none of that when you were. And so I've had to go, okay, give myself a little bit of a freedom to understand that I could be wrong in every single time. I like things that feel so right. I have no distinguishment between that and being wrong there. And as soon as I started thinking about that, the line that separates right and wrong really disappeared. It became a bunch of it became a giant Venn diagram of overlapping circles. And do I find myself in a single overlapped space, a double overlap space? Am I trapped only in a part of a Venn diagram because the other circles, concentric circles, I don't have that information to even fill out and know where my plot point goes? Like, where is the how, if you were to put a percentage on rightness and wrongness, is right and wrong split at 50-50? I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is just a black and white line. You're either on the mustard or the mayonnaise, man. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of gray, right? There's a lot of gray to play in. It's all on perspective. As we're continuing down this journey.
Yes. Bunch of time and stuff.
It's also funny to me when you think about the personality traits that we're bringing up earlier, like the constant self-reflection, the constant maybe hypersensitivity. I find that in times like today, where we have so many inputs of different, I don't know, things going on in the world, like I feel very affected by it all. From the standpoint is like I when I take those inputs in, I have to be very selective about what I rabbit hole into, what I dive into, what I choose to learn about, because I can really feel it and carry it on with me. I also find myself looking around at others and realizing that though I'm frustrated with other people and maybe they're not asking enough questions, maybe they're not being enough inquisitive, maybe I feel it's intellectually lazy. I also recognize that with so much going on in the world, there's a lot of people who lack the endurance.
Oh, yes.
To continue to take on all of these kinds of inputs and feel something about them, or and so I just pulling this thread a little bit further because it's a fun conversation to dive into.
Please.
Do you find yourself with enough endurance, like curiosity, like those types of things?
Oh yeah, I'm that's kind of part of the superpower. I am inevitably plagued by an overactive mind. It is constantly wondering, constantly going. I've gotten very good because I've gotten very good at having conversations with myself, not just reflecting, but literally conversations with myself. I spend a lot of time in my head, because as you said very poignantly, a lot of people don't have the endurance, and I get very kindly told, okay, that's enough, Aaron. Often, and I can't say enough good things about my wonderful girlfriend who has put up with this for over a decade, and it's gotten harder. The me that she knew when we first started dating in high school is not the me now. I cared so much less about what was true and not. I cared so much less about why I thought things. I would allow myself to sit in places of ignorance and intellectual dishonesty and be comfortable. I was comfortable there. It took becoming convinced that it is healthier for one's life. I'm not trying to apply this to every person. I will say it's healthier for my life, but I'm not not convinced that this doesn't apply broadly. And that is the more true things you know and the least amount of false things that you know. And the search for those answers leads to a more fruitful life. You inherently learn more about yourself. You inherently learn more about other people. To do the work and do it correctly, you have to become unbiased. You have to break your own ego. You have to be able to say, I have a part of me that is attached to this bias I hold. I have to set that down for right now and be okay with being completely uncomfortable with someone else's idea. I have to be okay with that because that's the only way I can understand them. It's not enough to just say, oh, I understand. Steel manning is a wonderful idea. It can be overused sometimes, but the premise of steel manning someone's opinion back to them so that they agree with it and they wouldn't change that is understanding. That is the other half of the coin of compassion. It is what it means to not to just love someone as your neighbor, distinguishing them apart from you. It's to love them as if you were your own neighbor. And that's you sitting in the house next to you, or that's you across the street. And it's you, but you just made a different choice 20 years ago. And you said that one conversation that you didn't say, and you ended up in that house with a different life with a different woman and dogs and cats instead of them. And to have compassion, to care enough about somebody to understand them, to learn from them, to know where you sit in your own belief structure. You have to treat them as your own self struggling. We've all struggled in our own heads. Why isn't that applicable across the street? And I find a lot of people don't want to think about the other person struggling in their head with their beliefs or being wrong and feeling so sure they're right, because we've all sat there in a place of being wrong, completely convinced we're right. And it's allowing other people to exist in that state, just like we know we exist in our state, and believing they're there. Like it's a level of putting your guard down to have to go, my God, they must spend days miserable. They must. We don't see it ever, but I do.
Yeah.
What, and for no fault of their own, through brain chemistry or dickhead bosses or dogs getting sick or whatever your life throws at you, they spend time miserable.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there walking around miserable for sure. There's a lot
of
people who are inevitably not going to live their best life, and whether that is
right,
environmental, has a lot to do with it.
Sure.
And then it's also, the paving of those neural pathways.
Yeah, man.
And the mindset that you adopt, and the people that you are around, and who you've chosen to spend your time around, and who you've chosen to edit out of your relationships. So all those things, kind of culminate. So I asked you, hold on a second. So I asked you 30 minutes ago.
Oh, shit.
What you learned from the podcast. And I think that last conversation,
this is what I've learned. Everything that I would have never.
Just tying it back to it is like, it is like, people are so unique, and there's a lot of people out there who are suffering, and that, like, asking questions and dissolving that ego, what an important thing to have, to be able to have these conversations with people and to learn things and be surprised, and then to do it enough to not have to be surprised anymore that there's things that you don't fucking know.
I know, man. It's you said a wonderful word, a wonderful phrase that I think captures the struggle in its intellectual dishonesty. And there is a group of there is a section of humanity. I was in the state in my teens where I did not have the tools of cognitive discipline to overcome, to even show that I was being intellectually dishonest about things. I didn't even have the tools to, it is down in that dark basement, and I'm trying to stand up in a well-lit room and look down into darkness. and see what's down there. And I don't have a flashlight, and I was just trying to guess what was. It was almost like I didn't even care what was in the basement in the first place. And then the door got opened, and I saw strings going down there, and I still was trying to, oh, where are those fucking strings going? I never grabbed a flashlight, and I never shined it down to try and see further before having to go down in there. But inevitably, through no act of my own, just being around humans, people kept handing me a flashlight. And they kept going, hey, there's fucking light switches, man. Did you know there's electricity ran in that basement? You can just turn on a light switch and look in there. And all of a sudden I was looking in this. I didn't want to, but the light was just, that's how it happens when you become convinced of something. You didn't choose to become convinced of it. You became convinced of it because reasoning works at a subconscious level in our heads. It's when you don't want to turn on that light switch, and people will fight tooth and nail to not turn on the light switch. And that's the dishonesty part, because they're telling themselves at that moment that they know more about what they don't need down there than what they've seen that is actually down there. And I can't find myself ever being comfortable in that position and knowing it. That's just the way my brain chemistry works. I don't even remember the me who was in that spot anymore, and I'm now plagued in a position to go, okay, how does one hand out enough flashlights that people can no longer refute the effectiveness of a flashlight in the dark?
Yeah.
I
love it.
I don't.
Dude, what a fucking a fun vein to go surfing down with you, man. That was thank you for answering that question, one, and thank you also for just being open to having a kick-ass conversation around it. I wanted to around this time pivot a little bit to music, though, something that we share.
Let's go.
We're both bass players.
Yes, sir.
Is that a little 6-string you got behind you right there?
Yeah, this is a Bryce long scale 6-string.
Oh man, so you're
35.5-inch scale. Big.
That's a big daddy right there. That's
yeah.
So I never got into playing 6 strings. I don't know, maybe it's just that extra C down there. I just I played a 5-string, had a 5-string fretless for a little while that I love. There's a little Franken bass. There was a guitar shop here in Boise. The guy who was running it would just kind of like make these random Franken basses out of parts and kits and broken guitars that would come in, and I had a blast playing that thing. But I didn't remember when you got into playing music. I think you and I talked a little bit about this in the past, but I just can't recall what got you into music, and then also like specifically what got you into slapping that bass, bro. But okay, I talk a little bit about the band too, because like I dig you guys' stuff for sure.
Wonderful. So I came up in a musical household. There was music everywhere in my life. I can never remember a time when there wasn't guitars out. Both my mom and my dad are musicians. My mom plays guitar and bass. My dad plays mostly guitar, but I'll play basically anything with strings. When I was a kid, my dad had a recording studio. And so there was always drum sets. I was just always inundated with music, live music. And then the radio, we listened to the radio and cassette tapes and vinyls. And it was just, there was, I have a trope of a story I always tell, that when I was in 5th grade, I came to school asking if people had heard of the new band Pink Floyd, because they were on so much that I had no idea at the time I was listening, they were already 25 years old, 30 years old. I had no idea that it was the past. It was just, Pink Floyd would be on, and then yet Primus would be on. And I had no distinction between time there. There's pictures of me as an infant in a guitar case with headphones on stage of my parents in a bar in Kenai or Kasilof or Homer, Alaska,
Yeah.
playing music, and the crowd's all there and they all have cigarettes in their mouth, and there's a little baby Aaron wrapped up in a blanket with headphones on right in front of the subs on stage in a guitar case flipped open. And that was my life as a kid. So music was always there. I didn't pick up guitar until it would have been freshman year of high school when I had this is the trap of being an insecure kid and never feeling like you were really part of the group. My other friends picked up guitar and I felt intensely let out or left behind. I felt intensely there was a whole nother level of being in society of school that was now unlocked, and they had the upgrades and they got the new special armor and they were running around with cooler weapons, and I still had the opening gun, and I was like, fuck, they have this thing. And all of a sudden my friends who were with me and we were upset that none of us had girlfriends and all that stuff, they all then all of a sudden had girls talking to them, because that's the only thing that mattered in freshman year of high school. It didn't really, that's the joke. But the things that I thought would looked like that this was an avenue of unlocking this thing. And so I started playing acoustic guitar to fit in, to not be left behind. When my friends would jam and sing Tenacious D songs, God damn it, if I didn't have the voice.
I could just play Jesus Ranch.
Right. Yeah. And then my brother picked up bass. Rusty, my little brother, is a phenomenal bass player. And he was musically gifted. He's one of those guys who it came innately, and I've always had to work. I was always a step behind all of my friends. Whether it was playing guitar, whether it was singing, whether it was learning to play, I've felt the struggle. I've had to work for it. It wasn't something that came innately. The fascination with learning it, we've already talked about that in detail. And so I did that. Started playing electric guitar because my brother was a bass player. We loved Metallica, and so that was the thing. That was the kickoff right there. Sophomore, junior high school, I was playing electric guitar. He was playing bass, and we were just learning Metallica songs. And we did a talent show my senior year with a medley from oh God, which Metallica concert was that? Oh God, I can't remember exactly which one it was now, but Kirk and Jason Newsted at the time did this wonderful medley together, couple 3 songs, and it goes into Nothing Else Matters. And we learned that back and forth and had this dueling thing, and we want to play that for the talent show. And then I went to college, man, and I bought an electric down there, and I would just sit there in my room and play and shred and learn metal songs. And I had no hope of even wanting to be a musician. And then in 2009, Jason Smith and our other buddy Sean Hoskins were in the band The Smash Bros, and that's what they called themselves. And it was Jason on congas and Sean on acoustic, and they were singing, and they were going around and they were playing little acoustic shows at all the bars and just having fun times. And we jammed one night at a party, and I had an acoustic guitar, and they both looked at me because we hadn't played in forever. They both looked at me and went, "Holy shit. Like, when did you get good?" I'm like, "Man, I just been playing, I know I can play at least okay enough with you to be with you guys, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." And so we played one show that way with 2 guitars, and immediately they're like, "Do you know how to play bass? We need a bass. We need low end so we can do these songs." And we were just having a lot of fun. And I picked it up and I went, "Oh, this is, I guess I'm a bass player." All along, if I would have picked up bass instead of my brother and me feeling like I couldn't copy him, and then I had to try and keep up. If I wouldn't, that was another one of those things. Look back in time. What if it would have all been different?
You had to change your pronouns.
Yes. 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 Yeah, exactly. And that was when I started, man. Started playing bass then. That evolved into an electric version of the Smash Bros, and we were a 5-piece electric band, and we were playing around. We started writing metal songs, and we played shows in Anchorage, and we started really playing and making a little name for ourselves. And then the Smash Bros inevitably broke up and Fighting Silence started. And that was the band that turned into the Fighting Silence that moved down here. And we made a great name for that band. And, we had a bunch of demos we put out and a few songs that got good traction, and we opened for Chimera, and we played a bunch of kick-ass band shows, man. And that was Fighting Silence that broke up and the podcast started.
Good.
Yeah.
What a damn. And there's it's funny, as I'm listening to your story, there's so many similarities for how I got into playing bass in that as well. We certainly have lived some parallel paths here.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I was in between 7th and 8th grade. And
oh yeah.
Yeah, it was, it might have been, it was right between 7th and 8th grade. And there was this like weird, funny little band. I don't know if you remember Jim Reed, Jordan Olson, that whole group.
Totally.
They had a band called Worm. And it ended up being like, it was like 8 or 9 different people who were in this band. There was a couple kids from Kenai, it was a couple kids from Soldotna. And so like Worm was this thing, it was just like rap rock, like Limp Bizkit style, whatever. And I was and you definitely remember this, in middle school, I was the DJ on Fridays. So
yeah, man.
Me and a couple other kids would run it. We'd spin old like Who records and just random Goo Goo Dolls or whatever was hot at the time. And those guys wanted me to play a song over the intercom that they had written.
I think I fucking remember this.
And it's such a like as an adult now, I look at it, I'm like, God, you guys are shitheads. But the song was actually like, it was called Fart on the Fat Girl.
I don't remember that.
And it was not a nice song, but it was a rap rock song, and it was whatever. So I played that song on Friday. I lost my job as the DJ for middle school, like kind of on the back end of maybe in the middle of 8th grade, possibly. But anyway, that band had started, and then it started to dissolve. Kids going to different high schools and different kinds of things. And I found myself that summer between 8th and 9th grade. I believe this is the right timing. Hanging out a lot with Jordan Olson and his brother, and wanting to still like be part of that band.
Yeah. And
Jordan's phenomenal musician, great guitarist.
Totally.
His brother Justin, drums killer, piano's killer. Like, they're just a kind of musically inclined family. They were set up for it downstairs in their house, and it's just like, all right, I guess I got to go and get a bass, man. I picked up like a Samick, like a little P bass, and
yeah, dude.
And a little, I don't know, there's maybe like an 8-inch little, I can't remember what the watt, maybe like a little 100 watt. No, I had a PV TKO 80 is what it was.
Okay.
15-inch.
Yep.
And so that's what I started playing on. And then it just kind of like, in the same spirit of like, I want to fit in, I want to have something, I want camaraderie, friends. And it opened up a whole world to me. And then eventually in high school, Joe Smith started playing drums. Shane Dunn, who was the guitar player of our band, that's all he did was play Metallica all day.
Oh, yeah.
I used to go over to his house and just hang out and listen to him for like 2 hours at a time. The guy could just play Metallica. And by the time we met Chance and actually like formed a band and stuff, like, and we played some shows up in Anchorage. We played on the a bunch. Like, what a fun and interesting time it was, except for toward the back end of high school. I ended up leaving, and then they changed the band a couple of times, and I think cross pollinated with people from other groups as well.
From lots of them, man. Yeah. There was that whole kind of, there was this cool music scene in the early 2000s. There was always the shows at the roller rink. There was, man, that was a good time to be around. Early 2000s.
Yeah, in Alaska, Inside, Clench. Like there was some.
Clench was great. Yeah.
I can't remember what. God, there was another.
God, what was their name? Not.
I was thinking of what Ian Parks was in.
Yeah. Oh, why can't I remember that band?
Yeah, we move on from cool music scene.
Yeah.
So what's the band you've got going now?
Yeah, I'm in the band Earth to Ashes. They've been a band here in Portland for 10 years. And they put out 2 full-length albums, one in 2015 and one in 2018. And shortly after their second album, you know, the one of the founding members of the band, the bass player, and our guitar players, you know, they're still really good friends. He you know, for whatever reason, I honestly didn't really get into it. He just he stepped away from the band, and so they had just put out, this was in 2018. They just put out their second album, and getting ready to go promote that and play that, and they lost a bass player. And so I was sitting here, Jason was in a band, you know, and I was again feeling left out and doing the podcast, and everything was going good there. And I had interviewed Matt, my guitar player, on my podcast. When we moved here, when Fighting Silence came to Portland, we really quickly found a local battle of the bands and entered that. And the very first year we were here, we got second place. Of all the Portland bands that joined, we were just this, I mean, literally fresh off the plane, band from Alaska, and we got second place in the battle of the bands here in Portland. And it was for Warped Tour and all that stuff. And so we got free passes to Warped Tour, and we didn't play there, but you know, we got treated like we won everything except actually getting to play on the Warped Tour. And so we just went like, oh, that was cool. And he was one of the judges there. And you know, people were like, oh, that's Matt Dorado. Oh, he's, you know, and so I got him on a podcast, interviewed him about Earth to Ashes before their band broke up or anything like that. And didn't really think of it. And I saw the post, they're looking for a bass player. And I was sitting here like, well, shit, I'm a bass player. I listened to some of their tunes, and I'm like, these are pretty cool tunes, man. And
well, I spent the last week like actually listening to the last album.
Oh yeah,
like just getting really familiar with it. And there's a track on there called Can't Flashback that's got such a fun bass intro. And then the bass throughout it too is it's cool. It's a cool sound. It's got this, I don't know, the whole album's got this kind of throwback. I don't want to say like this 80s feel. I mean, it's very like Iron Maiden-y, Queensryche, like, oh yeah, Rushy, like, you know, there's a lot of influences in there, but the vocals are great, man. The vocals are great, and musically it's awesome. So like, I'm a fan.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So, you know, diving into it, both, you know, we're a 3-piece, and the drummer and our drummer Mark and Matt, our guitar player, are incredible musicians. So if you guys listen to the old records, half of the time a bit more like the lower toned, a little raspier voice was actually Angelo, the original bass player, and him and Matt would share vocal duties. And then all of the higher harmonies and the high angelic, beautiful singing, that's all Matt. And so, you know, in that, I'm not as strong of a vocalist to sing a lot of lead parts and play bass. That's been that's been something I have to teach my mouth to not move with my hands, and my hands to not move with my mouth. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm fine doing backup stuff in smaller parts and rhythmically tied vocal lines. I am fine with. It's just singing long drawn out melodies over complicated time signatures. My brain doesn't oh, I don't get it.
Like what Les Claypool is capable of doing is infuriating to my brain on a bass guitar. I don't think a lot of people understand how difficult it is to do what he does when he plays.
It's incredible. So actually, Primus is one of my early favorite bands. That was the first band when I fell in love with bass before I realized that's what it was I fell in love with. I've been addicted to Primus forever. In fact, tomorrow I get to go. I'm going to see them. They're on their tour right now, doing Farewell to Kings.
I just missed them. I don't know why I didn't buy tickets. I totally forgot they were in town, and I saw everybody posting from Primus, and I'm like, I went to jujitsu that night. I could have skipped jujitsu and went to Primus. I don't know why. My bad.
They originally started this tour in 2019, and we bought tickets in 2019 for when they came through Portland. And because of, you know, they were coming early 20, and with everything that happened, that obviously it canceled. And so we've been waiting for 2 years for this tour to happen. And they're finally coming through. They're going to be playing a bunch of their own music, and then they're doing Rush's A Farewell to Kings in its entirety. And so not only are we going to see Primus, but then we're going to see Primus doing Rush. And not only that, but from what I've heard, nailing it. In fact, Primus, or Les Claypool and Geddy Lee spent days together, with Geddy teaching him specific parts about A Farewell to King bass parts, just so Primus could, or I keep saying Primus, him and Les Claypool and Primus are synonymous in my brain. Yeah. Just so Les Claypool can do the parts better and do the justice to Geddy Lee and Rush. So they're gonna, that's coming, and I'm actually going to that tomorrow. I can't wait. I'm wearing Rush shirt, I'm all in it. But yeah, so we're now writing new music. We actually we have a bunch of music done coming back from the studio. We're getting ready to release stuff. We're getting ready to shoot music videos, which is going to be a new venture for Earth to Ashes. The other beautiful thing about the band is both of them are in their 50s, and so my drummer and my guitar player they've been playing their instruments longer than I've been alive, and so there's a level of humbleness and maturity and comfort in them being musicians that I am able to pick up on and revel in. And when we get in a room together, I no longer feel uncomfortable about myself. Every time I think they're going to come over for practice, we happen to practice at my house. I have the space for it. So, my neighbors don't care. There's a band that lives across the street. There's a band down the road. So our neighborhood's pretty cool. Every time I come over, I'm worried that they're just going to be grabbing their stuff and leaving and going, "We don't need you in the band anymore." And I can't shake it. And we've gone to the studio together. We've done small tours. Like we've done stuff, and they've accepted me, and we have family dinners, and their wives make fun of me like I'm in the band. And I still can't not think that they're coming over to pack their shit up every time we have practice. But as soon as they get here, I'm a loud boisterous person. I'm sure everybody here right now can go, "Oh my God, this guy gets amped and he talks and his voice raises." And I bring that energy to music. I bring that energy to the band, and I feel comfortable saying they feed on me being a young guy, and then they tamper down me being a young guy. And it's this beautiful balance of their experience and their wisdom, and me. It's the old bull on the field and the young bull, and I'm, "Hey, let's keep active." And you're going, "Hey man, slow. We got a lot of time in front of us still, there is no pressure here." And it's been an eye-opening revelation. It's them accepting me, and me being a part of this has been making my self-worth is amplified because of the acceptance. We got a lot of fans, and it's weird to say, but I stepped into a position where this band already had traction, and I was not pushing it to get it started and then keeping up with the momentum. I was hopping onto a speeding train. I was worried for a long time about being accepted by the fans. They've been used to a sound and a look and a presence, and their other bass player was no slouch, man, and he was half of the voice of the band, and I inevitably could not be that. And so I had to figure out a way to make the songs my own, figure out a way to transform the position where I stand on stage into something that I am amplifying me, that the other guys can feed off of me, that looks authentic to the crowd.
Was the other bass player an 11-foot tall redhead?
No, actually, he was a shorter. I can't approximate his height, but he's Hawaiian, long, big, huge hair. I mean, huge, just curly, amazing hair. And I am follically challenged to the bitter end, so I don't have that, but it's great. My guitar player is as well. He's a baldy like me, and so we're doing the reverse ZZ Top thing where they both had beards. We just have no hair in front, and then the drummer has all the hair and none of that. So
That's awesome, man. So it sounds like you got a lot of like really fun and interesting stuff going on around right now, man. It's a good time for the band, good time to be getting back. You guys playing live shows again?
Yes, we just booked for anybody in the Portland, Seattle, Pacific Northwest area. We have our first show booked September 4th. As right now, it's still on. Everybody, it's still good to go at Dante's downtown.
Oh, cool.
In Portland. We're playing there with a local show. There's one band from Seattle and two other bands from here, and I should know their names. There's Delta Avenue. There is Tall Dark Whimsy and Simple Clarity. I'm so sorry.
No,
I
you're
should
good,
know
man.
this. I'm promoting my own shows. I should have all this in my head. I think I got most of it. Simple Clarity.
How long has it been since you've been on stage? Has it been a full 18 months, 2 years?
Over 2 years. So when we go on, the last show we played was July 15th of 2019. So it will have been 2 years and 3 months or something like that since we've been on stage. Yeah, that's terrifying. That in itself is a whole level of just anticipation that I love to feel again, and it's coming, and we're practicing, and trying to get back in shape, because there's a level of stage shape that is not practice shape. There's there's just intensity amps up, adrenaline amps up. You can't help but just grip everything a little harder. You want to play a little faster, and then you're doing the work to slow yourself down, and you're not in a room, not caring about anything. Now you're wanting to look cool and not. I have horrible bass face, man. I am one of those guys that is plagued with bass face, and I try to tell myself, hey man, don't make that face, and then I find my pictures of me just making that face. No, mouth opened, lip up, like eyebrow. Yeah, dude, I go. It's one of these like.
Oh yeah.
It's a bass face. But no, it's exciting, man. We're looking back into it. We got some really cool things as a band coming that I actually can't announce yet. I would love to be able to say what it was, but it's tied around new songs coming out and new music videos coming out, and cool stuff from the Earth to Ashes camp here in the near future. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll share something with you.
Ooh, exclusive. Big Blanchard podcast exclusive.
Yeah. The exclusive is we are getting ready to film. So a good buddy of mine just released a video, a movie. They made on Friday the 13th. They're horror movie fans, so they made a Jason Rising fan film. Okay. They completely independently shot, everything is independently produced, much like this thing we do now. It's on YouTube. Everybody can go check it out. It's Jason Rising, a fan film.
Shoot me a link to it, and I'll add it in the description of the podcast.
I will. So Carl Winery, who is the main filmographer and editor of the movie, is a fantastic filmographer in general. He makes lots of music videos. I got the chance to be in a music video for his band Ligature Marks, who I mentioned earlier. They wanted me as one of the characters in there. They needed a tall, gangly guy to run down a hallway and look bigger than the people, and they didn't have to do much editing for me to do that. So I got to be in that. But through the connection, everything, we're going to be getting a music video made by him. So it's kind of a cool thing. Everybody can go out, check out Hot Carl Productions, Ligature Marks, Vintersea. Those are the bands he's in. Check out Friday the 13th and get your mind blown at what some just people with passion and drive are able to accomplish with just their brains and some cameras, man. And that's, they're not high budget stuff. It's all in industrial and amazing quality creativity coming out of this place, man. And so we're luckily enough to be a part of that kind of future of band promotion. There's the whole avenue is moving away from releasing whole albums to single game now, man. Everybody has to do a single, and there's better be a music video for every song you put out as a single, or you don't get the traction. You know, no one wants a whole album anymore.
It's wild. It's wild when you think about like I brought up Queensryche earlier, but like Operation Mindcrime. Like if you don't listen to that album start to finish, like you miss out on so much, man. Like it's a story.
It's amazing.
Hour and 10-minute, hour and 20-minute story. And if you haven't heard the album, I believe it's about it's about a guy getting brainwashed to shoot a priest or something like that. Like
it's very wild. Yeah, it's a concept album about a guy who through drug addiction gets involved in a government plot to assassinate people.
That's right.
And he doesn't realize he's being brainwashed until he's brainwashed.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's there's a lot of art to that. So it's hard that then maybe there's not a lot of albums that were end to end like that, but to kind of lose that as an artifact of music is
to lose. So the beautiful. I don't think we're the what bands like Rush, and then moving later on into more modern proggy bands like the Iron Maidens or the Queensryches or any of those guys. Prog world is still alive and well and kicking, and there are bands putting out beautiful concepts albums all the time and long 20-minute songs and flowing piece. That world of music is alive and well. It is just Queensryche was a popular band.
Yeah,
there are Queensryche level bands today that no one knows their names, and that's the thing that's the attraction. It's not that it's not being done, it's just not commercially acceptable anymore. There's a reason why YouTube had to create YouTube Shorts. It's new. It's a couple months old. All of a sudden, there are short clips on YouTube that people can upload independently of their own stuff. And why wasn't YouTube people could just put up short? No, because people want, I just can scroll through these 30-second quick shorts and get inundated quickly in a feed of newness. I don't know of anybody who would even be interested in saying, hey, sit down on a couch, put some headphones on, and spend the next hour and 10 minutes of your life listening to music written 30 years ago. Yeah. I mean, for someone today who is grown up in that, I couldn't imagine someone being like, that sounds like a great time. Is there a video with it? No, it's only audio. In fact, it's on a vinyl and we have to load it and you're going to hear scratches. Oh, you mean it's not compressed overly and streamed for earbuds or my phone speaker? No, this is high fidelity.
It's going to be the equivalent of working on a dude ranch.
Yeah.
It's going to be, people are going to take vacations to go and listen to long form conversations or movies, or like they're I don't know, that like I'm just kind of riffing on this, but like it just kind of feels like in order to sequester someone long enough to get their attention, that it has to be a purposeful commitment. It has to be scheduled. Yeah. It has to be like that organic, like, sometimes you just had a road trip and you'd put on an album and absolutely just kill. I remember I had to drive to Anchorage, and I think it was probably Kill Switch, like Into Heartache, something like that. I just put it in the disc changer and just end to end, just yes to this album. Like I loved every song. By the time I got back, I probably listened to it 2 or 3 times. Rob Zombie, Hillbilly Deluxe. I remember being in 7th grade and listening to that end to end, and I'm like, this man is a genius.
Absolutely. Rob Zombie can't miss. In fact, he's still crushing it today. That is the purity of music, I think, and I do think that's lost. I think that I don't have proof of this, but I would be willing to wager a bet that there is a market in music production today that has the idea for a music video to be famous, and then producers sit in a studio and craft a song to fit a video that they want to go viral.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm not, and that's not ubiquitous. They're obviously, most bands are making music because they love to make music, obviously. But that's not the famous, that's not the viral shit. That is not the stuff that is making waves in, trending on Twitter. That,
Yeah, it's funny that content used to be in the wake of talent. And
yes,
now there's a lot of instances, a lot of examples where talent is in the wake of content. And
that
it's,
is the most beautiful way I've ever heard it put.
yeah, yeah, and it's troubling, right? Because if you have the content in mind, then you get to choose the
Right.
talent. And it's
Right.
choosing talent is very different than being talented. It's a strange
Yeah.
paradigm that we're in.
There's a wonderful man on YouTube by the name of Rick Beato. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He is a producer. He's a session multi-instrumental master. Been in the record game for 40 years. He knows everyone. He's talked to everybody. He has a wonderful YouTube channel, and he does this thing called What Makes This Song Great. And he sits through and he has all the stems of the recordings, and he breaks down songs, new or old. One week it could be the Beatles, the next week it could be Led Zeppelin. This week it was Slipknot. And he's breaking down what makes this song great of all genres. And he takes 20 minutes to delve into a 4 or 5 minute song and he will isolate individual stems and listen to the kick drum on this syncopated with think of the writing they had to do. And then he makes sure to go, and guys, there was no auto tune or quantizing here. This is to tape, and they sound this good. And he illustrates the point of all of the music that was the foundation of here was only made because they were actually good at their instruments. That's the reason that people knew who they were, was because they were good. It wasn't because they were following. I mean, some people did, obviously there was, when the new wave of British heavy metal, there were bands who sounded that way, who got lumped into the swell of the new wave. There was, of course, but the only reason that they toured was because they were good. They had to be able to play those shows and fill stadiums to make money in that day. There wasn't all the streaming revenue and everything like that. So they had to fill seats and they had to sell albums and hopefully sell merch. And the only way to get people to come to your concerts and buy your merch was your album had to sound good, and you had to be as good as your album live. You had to. There was no help behind you. Backing tracks weren't a thing yet. And that is the essence of music that I fell in love with. That's what I believed when I was told as a little kid what music was. That's what it was. I have such a hard time trying to visualize music not being that anymore. It's analog still in my head. It's still analog. It's it's the reason why I haven't made the jump, which everyone tells me I should, and do my podcast in video as well. You'll get more listeners and all that stuff. I go, yeah, but I remember listening to the radio, and they would do skits on the radio, and I had to think. I had to use my brain to go, man, you will know this. This will be so incredibly niche only to our experience growing up, Jake. But the Sweeney's radio commercials back in the day, you need shocks and car hearts? No, I need socks and car parts, or whatever that quip was. And they would make all those funny little jokes. And I had to sit there and think of somebody walking in wanting shocks and car parts, and everybody has car hearts and socks. And like that became a image in my brain that the words brought to me. And I think that's what music does. Queensryche does that to people. Rush does that to people. The Beatles do that to people. And it's fidelity. It's tangibility. It's a connection to the real world. I want to try and take it back to early in the conversation, and it's almost picturing you as that person giving you the gift of what they made. Like you have to jump into the other side and feel that. I want to ask you, what is music to you when you just think about the essence of the attraction to it? What is it? Is it emotional to you? Is it visceral? Where do you sit in the pocket of music mattering to you?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I personally, I got into country music when I was a kid. I was originally living in Louisiana. There's a lot of country music in Louisiana.
Oh yeah.
Got into Garth, got into Garth real early, and love that. Little Alan Jackson, got into
Oh
that.
yeah,
Listening to the radio all the
absolutely.
time. And
Yeah.
then it was fun. I and this is a cool experience. It was like we had a bus driver for about 2 years at elementary school, and this is going to Dozer Elementary in Erath, Louisiana. And I used to get picked up, and kids would bring like tapes on the bus of like music they'd pull off the radio or like actual tapes. And the bus driver would trust the kids on the bus enough to actually play the music.
You had a real life auto from The Simpsons.
That's no joke. Yeah. And so and their kids would bring different stuff. So like the first time I remember hearing like TLC's Waterfalls, for instance, was on a bus going to school, and other kids were getting into it. And that was I felt a part of it. Like I liked the music. There was a reaction. Like it changed the mood instantly on this school bus. Like we were all going home, and people were just like happy and laughing and enjoying it. And then I remember again, I had a birthday party, and I didn't know all the popular culture stuff as a kid, but I was around kids that had like older brothers that were really into music, and that they would bring in these songs. I remember being in like third or fourth grade. It was probably third or fourth grade. I was at a roller rink for my birthday party, and me and like four other kids were like rollerblading around to Coolio's Gangster's Paradise. And I remember feeling so fucking just
Free.
Man, I just was free. Yeah, I was a gangster. I was a four-bladed gangster, man. Just like sliding around on that smooth hardwood that was in there, and just the smell of the place, and the lights going around, and like the carpeted corner, and like the whole like nostalgic like roller rink deal.
Yeah.
I allowed myself since an early age to get moved by music, and I was always aware of it. And then, I ended up finding rock music to be the one that moved me the most, that like tapped into my emotions. I'll never forget the tipping point song for me was "Lit Up" by Buck Cherry. Dude,
man.
I just remember being in awe. I was like 11 or 12, and they didn't like bleep out "I love that cocaine" on the radio. They played it. You could catch K-Well and Sterling from Anchorage.
Oh yeah.
So I was like listening to it. I'm like, is he saying "I love that cocaine"? I love that cocaine. Like, why does he get to say that? And why does he? And why is that important to put into a song? And then I realized rock music in its own way was really edgy and was always pushing envelopes, and was always talking about, different, the trials and tribulations with drug and alcohol and relationships, and like feelings and emotion. There was a lot to it. And then, stumbled upon some screaming hardcore heavy metal. Got into that for years and years and years. But to me, I guess when you ask the question, like, what does music mean to you? It is a vehicle. It's a vehicle where on the highway of emotions, and you can kind of pick where you want to go. If it wants to be a long scenic ride, or if you want to just get on the freeway and floor it, and you kind of get to choose your own ending there. And it's something I've always appreciated.
Yeah, to go right off the coattails of that, which was eloquent. And this is a really fun conversation. I love the moment when you are listening to music. It could be your favorite song, and it inevitably takes you back to a place where you felt the strongest.
Yeah.
It inevitably takes you to a place of pure emotion, and you chose the song, but you didn't choose for it to affect you that way. You're immediately introduced to the feeling where you're no longer in control. The music is in control, and you can sit there, you can turn it off. But if you allow yourself to sit through that whole thing and really feel what the music is allowing you to feel, it, it's rewarding. It is freeing. You know that's the word. It's you're not committed to telling the song that you love it.
Yeah.
There's no point where you have to go, hey song, I just got done playing this song and now I'm still thinking about it, but I hope that song's thinking about me back. Like that doesn't,
we're gonna bring it full circle.
that doesn't exist when you listen to a song that breaks your heart or makes you jump for joy or put the pedal to the metal. I mean, it just exists.
Yeah, and there's sweet moments in it when you're willing to listen. I remember I used to go down to the Music Box in Saldana. It was just the local music shop, and there was a guy who worked there, and his name was Ryan. He was the bass player too, and he actually when I would go and hang out there for like 2 hours after school, a lot of times before I went home, just to be around musicians, talk about music, like pick up bass guitars and kind of play in the corner, those types of things. And he was a big Iron Maiden fan. And he's the guy who got me into Iron Maiden. And I will never forget the music show. Like, it was quiet. Nobody was in there. Alaska, so it's like wintertime. It's already starting to get dark. It's like 4 o'clock, right? So it's like, it's just kind of got that little haze that's out there. And so the kind of the lights are in a weird kind of situation. They're kind of like, I don't know, they're kind of dimmer with like what's going on outside. And he plays Fear of the Dark by Iron Maiden. I'd never heard the song before. And there's like the beginning part of that song is just so like, it just builds up. It's real slow, super patient. And it's a driving limit. And then it just busts.
Haunting.
It becomes alive. It's like watching. I don't know. I remember feeling something like so strongly about that song. In fact, like I've got the album cover to Fear of the Dark tattooed on the inside of my forearm, inside of my bicep, just because the memories like those and what music can do to you and how you can completely shift. Like Iron Maiden became instantly one of my favorite bands, and then I looked into them and I became somewhat obsessed with Maiden just because of
me too.
How much they brought to the table. And it's weird to talk about it now because it's like, it's just a band and it's just music, but no, it's not. It's so much more. It's something that you turn to on a regular basis when you need it. It's a tool. It can be so many different things. And if you allow it to flow it through you that way, right?
Yeah. I purposefully make time in my day, specifically crafted just to listen to music, and it's a lot of the time it's in the car, and I know approximately about how far away my work is on a normal driving day, and whether it's an 8-minute drive or a 10-minute drive, or I'm going downtown and it's 25 minutes, I will, before I leave, I'll spend the 5 minutes and curate a playlist of songs specifically designed to fill up that amount of time. And I will not get out of the car until the last song is done. And so if, a lot of times I love Iron Maiden. I love a lot of prog. And luckily for me, they have a lot of longer songs. And so there is a gang of 10-minute songs that are I love them. And so I'll just scroll through and, I want that 10-minute song today. And I'll put it on when I pull out of my driveway and I'll get to work. And whether it's an 8-minute drive or a 10-minute drive, I'm finishing a great song on my way to work every day. Then I have one of those for lunchtime. I have one of those for coming home. And I'm trying to always just feed that thing that I that was given to me as a place of nutrients in the beginning that I've now become accustomed to, and I don't want to go on a diet from.
Yeah.
And it is still nourishing. It never gets disgusting. It is the gummy bears of soul food. Like, it is, you could just do it forever, and it's a treat every single time. I'll find myself driving and I get so many looks. I am unabashedly air drumming. I'm playing every instrument. I'm singing the parts. Like, I am viscerally attached to the music, and it never lets me down.
And it's my kids look at me like well, they've kind of gotten used to it now, but like I sing in front of my family all the time.
Oh yeah.
Because I would do that if they weren't there. And I'm not the best singer in the world. Not even close. It's just one of those things where it's, there's certain songs that come on. If Slide by the Goo Goo Dolls comes on, you bet your ass I'm fucking singing. Like, I'm sorry. All right. You don't even try to shame me out of singing like Push by Matchbox 20. I'm sorry.
Man, sorry. I will sing the shit out of some Matchbox 20 for sure. Sugar Ray, give me any Sugar Ray.
Why
Let's
not?
do it.
Well, because it's not like I listen to that during the day, but if it comes on, I know the words. Smash Mouth too, man. I ain't scared. Smash Mouth comes on, I'm singing some Smash Mouth. I'm sorry.
I always feel like an all-star.
I do too, brother.
Every time.
That's what a awesome segue to wind out our time here, man.
Man.
I am extremely appreciative of you. Making the time to come on the podcast, just being kind of an open book, and then just playing with me. I usually have a lot of like really structured questions. If you listen to the podcast, I made it a point just to have some fun and talk today, man. And I want to do more of this. I'd love to do more of it with you, bringing you on, bringing some other folks on, and just talking about life, talking about music and perspective and all those types of things, man. I find you to be such an energetic, passionate human being, and somebody I'm lucky to have recrossed paths with in life. So definitely fortunate for the friendship that we've built in the last year or so here, and or rebuilt, and building you the best, man. Wishing you the best in everything you do. The band, Earth to Ashes, again, big stuff coming from them. The podcast, A Journey Through Time and Stuff. Go download it, go listen to it, go see what this man's about, man. And be in touch, brother.
Jake, thank you so much. You're a wonderful human. I know everybody, all of your listeners, everybody sees it. They keep coming back. I keep coming back for more. I wish you the best as well, man. Thanks a lot for this.
All right, take care, brother.
Later.